Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the first episode of the Forge podcast. My name is Ryan Messer, and I started to do this because a couple of folks actually had asked me that they wanted an actual podcast based around expounding upon all sports here in Birmingham. So a lot of people enjoyed what I had for the Stallion Stampede. So with Shotgun Sports, we're going to go ahead and do the Forge podcast, which is going to be all sports here in the Magic City. Again, we're going to try to focus on the professional sports here because majority of the time, the conventional media, with the exception of a few such as CBS 42 and Jocks, as well as Disrupt the Media, they do give a little bit more commentary toward the professional sports teams. However, it's still not enough commentary to keep these guys, to keep the demographic interested, So, with that, we're going to try to avoid the collegiate sports as much as possible on that. We're also going to have periodically some guests on the show. We actually released that tonight's episode is going to have Rick Karle, the one, the only Rick Karle, from Rick Karle's Good News, and well-known news analyst and anchor that's been with the city for years. We're going to talk to him for a little bit, but most of these guys, I get the fact that most of the conventional media does not focus on the pro sports because right in this area, the collegiate sports leads the demographic. But, and that's what sells the ads and the sponsorships and stuff like that. We only have one sponsorship partner right now, and that is Blue Spring Living Water. Guys, it is heating up, and Blue Spring Living Water will keep you guys hydrated. Don't worry about going out in the heat to get water from the grocery store. They'll deliver it right to your door. So make sure you guys take a step toward a healthier life with Blue Spring Living Water. Guys, this is the Forge Podcast. So we're going to lead off with the Birmingham Barons, if you don't mind the pun there. Since we last left off from the Birmingham Sports Brief, the Barons were currently number 1 in the league, and with the Tennessee Smokies right on our tails. But we wound up losing that series that we were in with the Montgomery Biscuits. However, when the first half ended on the 23rd, Birmingham was on top and wound up winning the first half. This is the first time in 10 years, and over 10 years, that the Birmingham Barons will be in the playoffs for the Southern League. So it's great to see this team, how well they've done. I've got to give credit to a bunch of the players. Tim Elko, great first baseman. Our pitching rotation is really, really good this year. And even though we've lost a few guys to Chicago and up in AAA, however, Sergio Santos has been really good managing this team. So kudos to him and the whole team. They're looking great. But they started the second half with a series against the Tennessee Smokies. We're going to break down the games. So starting on Tuesday, the 25th, it started off kind of rough for the Barons as Hario Ariante in the first couple innings in the top of the third wound up giving up 3 walks, a hit by pitch, and then gave up a run on balk, and then ended up the top of the third with 3 runs to nothing. They ended the top of the third with 3 runs to none. Playing small ball with the Barons, they wound up ended up the third with Tim Elko bringing in 2 runners with a line drive single to center field, which brought those 2 guys on home. The Barons also scored 7 more runs that evening, unanswered. So it was a great defensive match after that. Matt Hogan scored 2 runs, 2-run homer in the bottom of the 7th, and then doubled again in the 8th, bringing in 2 more runs. So the final score of that game was 9-3. The final stats on that one was 3 runs for the Smokies, 4 hits, and then 0 errors on that one. For the Barons, that game was 9 runs off of 11 hits, and there was no errors for the Barons that evening. On to Wednesday night, where it kind of started off with a run for each of them in the first inning. But then it was all Barons for the next 6 innings, guys. Edgar Quiero solo shot in the 4th, a wild pitch bringing in Tatum in the 5th. Then we had Jacob Gonzalez singling in the 7th to bring home Hogan. And then Brooks Baldwin homered to bring Hogan on in there in the 7th as well. So it was a great offensive match there. The bats were super hot there. So desperate, the Smokies wound up going back to back, battling back with 6-run blow in the top of the 9th. So putting us down by 2. But down by 1. Tim Elko walked it off with a 2-run homer. He even mentioned that he's not sure that he's ever, even in college or high school, walked off with a home run. So he said he's had multiple walk-offs as far as just walk-off hits, but he said that he's not sure that he's ever had a walk-off home run in his entire career. So that's great to see him have that one. The final stats of that one was Smokies with 7 runs off of 8 hits, and there were no errors for them on that evening. The Barons wound up with 8 runs off of 11 hits, and there was 1 error. Switching over onto Thursday, the bats were really quiet. They went from having really hot bats on Wednesday to having quiet bats there on Thursday, as Jake Eder wasn't in his best form pitching on the mound that night. He only walked 1, but he wound up giving up 3 runs on a homer in the 2nd, as well as there were a few more issues there. Only 1 run scored when Edgar Quiero wound up scoring on a sac fly from Michael Turner in the 2nd. And then it just was really quiet for the Barons that night. The Smokies wound up with 4 runs off of 6 hits. There were no errors. And then the Barons only had that 1 run off of 2 hits, which was Edgar Quiero, and there were no errors. That was a rough night. But Friday night, it got a lot better but the Smokies started off hot with the first two batters were reaching with singles, and then the third batter grounded for a double play, but wound up moving uh, over to third, runner moving over to third, and then the fourth batter sent him home and luckily got out with only one run scored uh, on that inning. After that, it was all Barons with a Jacob Gonzalez grand slam in the second, and then Matthews wound up scoring a 2-run homer in the fourth. Nature must have had a mercy rule for the Smokies on that night because the game was eventually called due to rain there in the fifth inning. The finals for that game were Smokies with 1 run off of 6 hits, and there were no errors for the Smokies. The Barons wound up with 6 runs off of 5 hits, and there were no errors. Saturday was a little rough. Barons struck first, though, with Wilfred Veras bringing in Gonzalez for the first. And then the Smokies wound up tying it up in the fourth when it looked like Noah Schultz kind of started getting a little tired or fatigued there. The Smokies wound up taking the lead in the sixth, scoring 2 runs off of a double to deep left, and then the Barons didn't get any help from the offense until Gonzalez wound up bringing in Christopher de Guzman for a run there. And then Tennessee wound up padding their lead in the eighth with a sac fly, bringing in an insurance run there. This game didn't come out without any drama because the Barons hitting coach wound up getting Ricky DeMonico wound up getting thrown out due to a discrepancy in arguing with umpire Elliot Melton on his calls. So it's kind of rough. It was a very emotional night. This is a very tight race here in the Southern League North. We saw that toward the end of the first half as the Smokies started coming back there. So we've got to get in a stride and start winning some games here. And we thought we were going to be able to tie it up and be tied with Rocket City and get ahead of the Smokies in the first half, or the second half, sorry, with the game on Sunday. However, it was a rough final evening for June for the Barons. Kai Bush had a very rough night. He gave up a home run in the second, and then had wound up with 4 walks with loaded bases when he came out. And then across all the pitchers, they wound up walking 10 players, guys. Just a rough night for these pitchers for the Barons last night. Each of the first 3 pitchers wound up giving up home runs as well, and it was a total rough night. It was a shutout for the Smokies there. The finals were Smokies 6 runs off of 7 hits, and there were no errors. And then for the Barons, there were no runs off of 1 hit, guys. They only had 1 hit all night, and there was 1 error. The standings right now for the Southern League North are Rocket City number 1, with Birmingham and Tennessee tied for second. But technically, if it came to it, that would be them winning this series would wind up being the tiebreaker. But Um, then Chattanooga in last. But we've got a chance to get ready and go up in the series because Rocket City has come to Birmingham. They are playing right now with in that Regents Field, and for a rare Monday night game. It's a very rare to see the Barons playing on a Monday night, but with the holiday, I'm guessing that's kind of how they've got that going. But they're going to also have Wednesday night fireworks. So if you're going to be going, maybe go out there to see the game because they're going to have a massive fireworks show there on the 3rd. So make sure you go out, watch the game, watch the fireworks, celebrate our country's independence there. Switching over to the Birmingham Legion. Wednesday night, they took a trip up to the Motor City with an early goal for Detroit City, kicking things off. And it stayed 1-0 through a majority of the second half there. However, Derek Dodson scored his first goal with the Legion, and with less than 10 minutes left in the match. So that was a good tying goal there. And then the team captain, Manuel Cavita, wound up scoring his first career goal with less than 5 minutes to go and for the go-ahead goal there. It was great to see this team. They wound up winning that game, and that was actually broadcasted on CBS Sports Network. So it was great to see that they were actually on national television there. Then on Saturday, the team came home to face the #1 Louisville City FC. After a back and forth, kind of up and down the field first half, the Louisville City FC wound up scoring 2 back-to-back goals shortly 10 minutes into the second half. With 10 minutes left in the game, Louisville scored again, but the Legion wound up coming back and answering it with one of their own. But with 4 minutes left to go, the Louisville City FC wound up scoring the final goal to put it on away for Louisville City FC. Right now, the Birmingham Legion is currently in 6th place of the Eastern Conference of the USL Championship, and they're still in playoff contention right now. So as long as we can stay in playoff contention and we do really well in the playoffs, we've got an opportunity to do something pretty spectacular and have 4 teams in the playoffs for Birmingham, which would be amazing. It'd be really cool to see some championships come out of these playoffs. But right now in 2024, the Birmingham Bulls wound up winning or going into the championship or to the playoffs this past season. Of course, the Stallions with their championship run there. And then now the Barons have made the playoffs. And if the Legion can hang on to this spot, that will be 4 teams in the city of Birmingham in the playoffs in the same calendar year. Hopefully we can see something come up for the next segment that we have for the Birmingham Squadron, who just celebrated their SummerSlam, and they are which was their viewership party for the NBA draft for the New Orleans Pelicans. That was at Avondale Brewery this past Wednesday night. And the Pelicans had the 21st overall pick, which they picked up Yves Messi from Baylor, which is I saw a few of his clips. He looks pretty good. He's been uh, very big on both sides of the ball, defensive and offensive. Bunch of rebounds. But what was really crazy is we wound up trading Orlando the 2020 or 2030 and the 2031 second round draft picks for the 47th overall pick, which was Antonio Reeves. So it's great to see. I hope to see those guys there in the Magic City at Legacy Arena sometime, hopefully. And then at that post draft presser, executive VP of basketball operations, uh, David Griffin, wound up saying this.
Would really like to think that we're at a point now as a team where we can judge the development of our players by the work. And I don't care what it looks like. I want the work rate to be really high. And I think we're in agreement that the Birmingham Squadron is a good opportunity for people to develop. It doesn't matter if they're playing minutes if the quality of the reps aren't really, really good and the attention to detail isn't really, really good.
So it's great to see that the front office of the Pelicans sees the benefit of these guys coming to Birmingham, and hopefully the squadron's here to stay in the city. It's great. We need to get, if you can, make sure the tickets are right now for sale for season tickets. If you can't, then try to make some games this season. It's been great. It's a great time. They always have some stuff for all everybody, the whole family. Uh, they've got stuff for kids there. All kinds of entertainment there between the play and then there in the intermission as well. Um, but we also want to go ahead and bring you this. We have the one, the only Rick Karle. He, you know him from Fox Channel 6. You know him from Channel 13. You know him from his social media pages. So let's go ahead and bring on Rick Karle. I want to thank you, Rick, for coming on. Such a great guy all around, and just a legend in this area, especially in broadcasting and in sports. So we got a few questions for you. How does a guy from Big Orange Country in Syracuse, New York, wind up getting into SEC country, spending a majority of his career covering teams like Alabama and Auburn?
Because I was lucky, because I was blessed. My dad was in the grocery business, and we grew up in Syracuse, New York. Moved us to Buffalo for a while. Moved us to New England when I was in high school. Went to the University of New Hampshire, the local school. It'd be like going to Alabama or Auburn here. Majored in journalism. Got a little job at a tiny TV station in Hanover, New Hampshire. It was right out of college. I haven't taken any TV courses in college. I'd taken a lot of radio work, done a lot of, I was a journalism major, but I didn't do a lot of TV work. I kind of talked my way into the sports gig at this little tiny TV station in Hanover, New Hampshire. It's a tiny town in New Hampshire, the town where Dartmouth College is located. And it was as an NBC affiliate, and it was at the bottom of a hotel, bottom of a Holiday Inn. We didn't have a set. We didn't have a teleprompter. We'd sit in front of a coffee table. And I remember the anchor would say, "Howdy, neighbors." That was how he'd sign on. And I would do the sports, and I'd report on the Boston Red Sox and all that. And I really learned the trade. I learned how to shoot my highlights myself and edit myself. And remember the first day, it was funny. I walked in, I started 2 days before I graduated from college. And I walked in, and I said to the news director, I said, I've never edited videotape before. I mean, you're going to give me a couple days to learn. He goes, "No, you're on in 8 hours. You better start listening." So it was really funny. So he took care of me, and the rest is history. And I learned the trade. About 3 years later, I took a job in Jacksonville, Florida. 6 years after that, Eli Gold was leaving Channel 6 in Birmingham because he got the Alabama football gig. And Channel 6 was looking for a sports guy. My agent down in Jacksonville, Florida, suggested I apply for the job at Channel 6, and I got the job, and I moved up here with my wife, and I've been here for 35 years. That's a long story, I know, isn't it? But that's how I got a guy from Syracuse got to Birmingham, Alabama, and we've been here since, and we love it. So we'll never leave. That's the game.
But you talked about Eli a little bit. It's kind of ironic you're both from New York, and it's kind of crazy how both of your stories kind of intertwined there a little bit.
Yeah, isn't it wild? He was from New York City. He actually wanted to be a play-by-play guy. He used to sneak into the Madison Square Garden to watch sporting events, and he told me he started 16, 17 years old selling popcorn and peanuts as a concessionaire at Madison Square Garden. And one day walked up into the radio booth and started talking up the guys, and that's how he got into the job himself. I mean, it's great. It's amazing how we get into this. Again, I talked my way into that first job in Hanover, New Hampshire, I was telling you about, because here I'm 22. I needed a job out of college. And I called the station, and it happened to be my hometown. And I called back to Hanover, and I said to the news director, said, "Hey, do you have any job?" He goes, "Well, I have a job opening for a sports guy." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be in town tomorrow. Do you mind if I stop by and say hello?" He said, "Nah, come on by." Well, that was kind of a fib. I wasn't going to be in town, but I called my buddy up there and I said, "Hey, listen, I told this guy I was going to be in town." And so I borrowed his couch. I slept over, did the interview the next day, and got the job. So it's, look, you do what you got to do. I've had a blessed career, about 43 years. Eli, perhaps more impressive than mine with all his play-by-play work and everything. So, but it's, hey, you do what you got to do, right?
I don't know, man. I mean, in your career, you wound up winning a national Edward R. Murrow Award,
Mhm.
6 regional Murrow Awards, 23 regional Emmys, and 60 AP awards. And then on top of that, you were on the boards for the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, the International Motorsports Hall of Fame, and even
Mhm.
the board of the Heisman Trophy. So, but of talking about all of that, what was the highest? What would you say is the highest honor you received in your career?
Oh boy. Well, to be married for 40 years next week. I mean, that's
Wow.
I mean, a more happy wife, happy life. I mean, come on, I'm not stupid here. But no, as far as honors, look, I've got 25 Emmys now. I got a lifetime Emmy last fall, and send the old man off into the cow pasture there. But when all is said and done, they're going to make good doorstops when I'm dead and gone. My kids won't know what they even are. But I think that the biggest honor, you know, Alabama Sports Hall of Fame is big. They put me in last spring. So that just means that I meant a lot to the sports scene here in Alabama. A funny story about a big honor I got. You'll like this. It was 1997. I was named the winner of an Edward R. Murrow National Award. Now, this a national Murrow is big. A lot of regional Murrows are passed out, but a national Murrow is big. We did a story, me and Mike Tucker at Channel 6, on a basketball prospect who was arrested for murder. He killed a shop owner in Homewood, and it was a tragic story. He was put away for life in Donaldson. They led us into the prison and to the basketball courtyard. We did a big thing on him about his life was ruined. Anyway, I won a Murrow Award, and they flew me to New Orleans to get the award from none other than Walter Cronkite. Now, I've met a lot of people in my
Wow.
life, a lot of sport, but Walter Cronkite, yeah, that's the big guy,
Wow.
right? So I'm down in New Orleans. It's on national TV, public television. And I get up on the stage. You have to walk up a couple risers, to pose for the picture. So Mr. Cronkite gives me the award. And I expected him to say something like, well, congratulations, son, good job. You know what I mean? So, but I pose for the picture, and he looks at me and he says, "Son, don't fall," or he said, "Son, don't step backward or you'll fall off the riser and break your leg. Good night." And that's all he said. And so that was my brush with greatness with Walter Cronkite. But I still have that thing down there. So that was a lot of fun to fly down to New Orleans and get a Murrow from Walter Cronkite. The Emmy Awards are a lot of fun, but the Murrow Award from Cronkite, that's pretty big. As far as
That's awesome.
sports, yeah, sports honors, again, I get a lot of Emmys for best sports anchor in the Southeast. That's nice. It doesn't mean you're necessarily the best, but it means you're certainly among the best in your can be considered at least you're as good as everybody else out there. So.
I've got to say, grew up watching you, so like I said, you're one of it. You're the best in this area, in history. So, uh, but in your 34 years of covering sports in Birmingham, in the state of Alabama, what was your favorite story that you were able to cover?
Favorite story. I always say I've been to like 7 national championship games, 5 Super Bowls, 62 Talladega races, the Daytona 500, the Brickyard, the NCAA basketball. I've been to Wimbledon. I've covered them. I covered the Masters when the year Jack Nicklaus won it in 1986. Yeah, I've covered the kick six. I've covered everything, but perhaps the couple moments that I remember are the kick six. I was in the end zone behind Chris Davis, and remember Nick Saban, Coach
Oh
Saban called
wow!
that timeout. And so we're kind of waiting around. There's like 1 second left on the clock, and I was working at Channel Six, Fox Six, and Sheldon Haygood, my buddy, was. We just flipped a coin on all these, but I was picked to cover the Auburn Tigers that day. Sheldon was covering the Crimson Tide. So I said to my photographer during that timeout, we're talking to Chris Davis. I knew Chris from high school. I covered him on sideline, for years. And so he went to what, Woodlawn, was it? Or Winona, one of those. So anyway, I'm talking to Chris, and he's going, yeah, yeah, I know I can take this back. We're kind of jawing back and forth. And all of a sudden they come back on television and of course the thing falls short. And I said to my photographer, I said, listen, let's not run out on the field and try to interview these Auburn players because I think they're going to make this field goal. I think Auburn's losing. I think Bama's going to win this. It's just like Saban would do. Well, there goes Chris Davis, right? Chris Davis is going to win the football game. So all heck breaks loose. We got trapped out on the 50-yard line. I've got beer poured on my head. I've got champagne all over me. I've got a live shot in 10 minutes. I'm trying to get through the crowd. It took me about 45 minutes to get out of there. I had to crawl through the hedges up into the stands, got scratched like everybody else did. Just that scene was the most unbelievable moment that I've been in as far as sports. Now, another one, but there's so many of them. You talk about 2nd and 26, Tua. I'm standing right there where Devontae caught that ball. And I'm telling my photographer after what Tua took the sack, either like on the 43-yard line, Georgia was up by 3 in overtime for the national championship. I'm thinking to myself, Bama ain't going to win this. They're not looking good. I said, let's go easy on Bama afterwards. Let's wait till they get in the locker room to interview them. Well, you know what happened next? Devontae goes flying by, and Tua throws the pass, and Bama wins it. All heck breaks loose. Bradley Bozeman is asking his girlfriend Nikki Detter to marry him on the turf. Anyway, we go into the locker rooms about an hour later, and everybody's celebrating, and there's one player in the corner with his back to us, and I go, "Come on, my photographer, let's go over and try to interview this guy." Well, that player was Jalen Hurts. Well, Jalen Hurts had been lifted from the game. He was kind of embarrassed. People were knocking him on Twitter and national TV. He couldn't get the job done. To a rescue the day. He turned around and said, "You got a minute, Jalen?" He said, "Yeah, I got a minute." There were tears in his eyes, and he had a grin just ear to ear. And I said, Why are you so happy after what happened to you tonight?" And he said, "Because I'm a national champion." Right in the heart, right there. I mean, that
Oh,
that got me. And again, that was one of the great moments that I've been to too. But there's been so many of them. I've covered Dale Earnhardt. I've covered Michael Jordan, Arnold Palmer. There's just a lot of stories that involved in all of them. Coach Stallings had me out just 3 months after John Mark died to his
mm.
ranch in Paris. I've developed a good friendship with Coach Stallings over the years. So um, no, I've been blessed. It's been a great run. I had a great time for sure.
I think you might have just answered that, but you've had the opportunity to interview countless celebrities, athletes,
Mhm.
coaches, like you just said. But who was out of all the interviews, who was your favorite person to
Mhm.
interview? Like,
Well,
as
yeah.
far as an interviewing aspect.
Well, that's a no-brainer. You can probably, Barkley. I mean, you can't go wrong with Charles because whether you like what he says, you don't like what he says, and I agree with a lot of it. I disagree with it. And the more I listen to him, I think that guy makes a lot of sense. But then again, some of the things I don't agree with. But he is just so. I met him in 1989. He and his wife Maureen, they were at Charcy's house, his mother's, and Granny. Granny lived with them, little place in Chelsea, and that's when he was with the 76ers, I think, before he went to Houston. and finished up his career Phoenix as well. But he's just been great. He's been great. I was in Los Angeles last week, and my daughter lives out in L.A. She's trying to make it in the film business. She rooms with a guy who she went to NYU with, and this guy is the biggest Barkley fan in the world. So I'm out there in L.A. visiting Mia, and I'm talking to her roommate Ishan, and Ishan says, "Oh man, I love Barkley so much." I said, "Hold on." So I texted Barkley. I said, "Hey man, you got time to say hi to this kid named Ishan out in Los Angeles? He's like 22 years old. He thinks you hung the moon." The phone rings. Charles Barkley. He goes, "I'm driving into TNT right now. I'm in Atlanta. I got 5 minutes before I walk in the studio. Put Ishan on the phone." And Ishan talked to Barkley for about 5 minutes, made his life. That's kind of what kind of guy, Barkley is. He's just been great. But others are so great interviews. I remember the Braves. You're probably too young to remember the Braves in the 90s. They had that run with Maddox and Glavine
Mm-hmm.
and Smoltz, Chipper. Those guys were great. We used to go over there all the time. Interviewing Michael Jordan was always a lot of fun. I loved interviewing Jordan. He had 1994 played for the Birmingham Barons. As
Mm-hmm.
you know, he'd already won three NBA championships. He comes down. This was the biggest news in '94 as a local guy. I'm with Channel 6 with Fox 6 back then. So it's April, right? The season's opening. We go down. We try to make a habit of going live during batting practice every night at 5:20. That's when my sportscast was. The Barons BP was 5 to 5:15. So I would set up. They'd let me set up right outside the batting cage at the Hoover Met.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be there. I'm Michael Jordan here, right next to me, doing. We'd have him live. And every night after batting practice at 5:15, they'd end. I said, "Michael, you got a minute to step over here live?" He goes, "No, no, thanks." Next night I do it. "Michael, no, I'm not going to do it." "Well, why aren't you going to do it?" "Well, I never did talk before the game with the Chicago Bulls. I'm never going to talk, here." And that's fine. He was nice to us. He talked to us after the game. So this went on and on and on. April, May, June. I said, "Michael, I am going to ask you every night to go live with me at 5:20. All you got to do is step 3 feet over here and go live, and you're going to admire me so much after a while you're going to go live." He said, "No, I'm not going to do it." Well, it's getting late in the summer. It was like August of that year. I pull into a gas station on Highway 280, and up drives on the other side of the gas tanks Michael Jordan in a fancy yellow convertible. So I'm trying to get his attention through the gas pumps, right? I see maybe, he'll recognize me. Maybe he'll finally say, "Oh yeah, I'll go live with you." Finally, we finished filling our gas tanks at about the same time. We put the nozzles back in the tank, and he looks through the tank at me and he smiles. He said, "I'm still not going to do it." When he drove away. So that was my brush with greatness with
Mm.
Michael. So I tried, but he was very nice. He always talked after the game, and he was a lot of fun interviewing as well. But as you can tell, I can talk a mile a minute on a zillion different interviews. Coach Saban was always fun. He did live appearances here in this kitchen for about 5 or 6 straight years ago with Feinbaum and I. We call it Carly's Kitchen, and he would come in here and go live, and we'd fix him breakfast, and he'd give us some coaching tips out on the front lawn. So that was fun. Um, Again, there's just so many of them, but it's hard to say that Barkley is not the king of all interviews. He's just he really is good.
Awesome. You talked about Paul Feinbaum. He's another guy from our area that wound up just exploding. Can you tell a little bit about how y'all worked together in the past?
Yeah. He used to work at the local radio Jocks, and then before that, it was at WERC or forget
Mm-hmm.
all the call letters. But yeah, I remember the first day I came here in 1989. He had me on his radio show with Bob Lockamy, and I think the radio station was down on it was down by the Chick-fil-A at 5 Point South, right there by UAB. So anyway, I did a good interview with him and Paul, blah, blah. So I got out of the radio station. This is again my first day of work at Channel 6 before I went into work. And I turned on the radio to hear what they were saying about me, being the young guy that I was. I was 31. And Feinbaum said, and they came back from a break, and Lockamy said, "Well, that was Rick Karle. Glad to have him. How do you think he'll do, Paul?" And Paul said to his audience, "He won't last 6 months." So he was not very impressed with me. Thanks for the pat on the back there, Feinbaum. Anyway, we ended up working together 25 years. He would come down from his station when he later worked up on the mountain on his way home and do sportscast with me at 6:20. And then we did a Saturday night show together for like 25 years, Fox 6 Sports Live, excuse me. And then he joined us for all the specials on all the national championships. So he's a good friend. He's been very good to me. I talked with him just the other day when the SEC network came along. He and Mike Slive were close, and he went big time, and he left me here in Birmingham. What do you do? But he's been good to me, and the SEC network's done really well, and I'm still waiting for my phone to ring. So maybe Mr. Sankey will call me at some point. So
Maybe.
we'll see how that goes.
We'll
Yeah,
see.
that's right. Not counting on that though.
Um, since you've been here in Alabama, we've had the Fire, the Barracudas, the Thunderbolts, Steel Dogs, and the Iron. From your perspective, why do you think that the rebirth of the Stallions has been so successful? Even though that the attendance numbers haven't been the
Mhm.
greatest.
No, they haven't. I think their model is pretty good. What they're doing, they're not trying to get too fancy with all these rules, and so many of these leagues came in with these different kind of rules. People in Birmingham and Alabama like football. We're like the number one college football TV viewing state in America. I mean, regardless, it's the shares in the hut levels, households using televisions, hut levels are through the roof when it comes to football. And I think they've done a good job with their motto. I think we're going to have to wait until after this season to see where the UFL goes. The USFL, and now the UFL. I think there's some good people behind it. Moose Johnson, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I think there's some big money behind it, but still, I think it is a niche thing, and we will see how it goes. I love what they're doing on TV, though. I mean, Fox, the NBC folks, everybody have done a really good job. It's a good product. Ticket prices are good. Protective Stadium has been a great venue. Build it and they will come. But we're going to see. We've been through too much. We're Birmingham people. We're a little jilted on this thing. We remember the old Thunderbolts and the Barracudas, and you remember Jay Barker played for the.
Hmm.
Just so many familiar faces that didn't make it in that so-called lower level football. So we'll see where it goes. But I think they got the right people behind them, and I think they put on a good product. So we'll
And
cross our fingers. Right?
like you said, they Fox announced that the Birmingham market is the number
Mhm.
one market in the UFL right now. So
Yeah.
they're one of the main number one markets. So that's
Look,
really
we've
good.
always we've always been hungry for NFL. We wanted an NFL team for you. The problem is, and again, I don't know. I'm not Roger Goodell here. I don't know everything about this, but from I think this makes sense. Our problem is we're just too close to these other NFL franchises. We're close to Nashville. When the Titans went in, that hurt us. The Falcons are 2 hours away. I don't think the NFL would want three NFL teams that close together. That's the rub on Birmingham. It's just a
Mhm.
geographical thing. I mean, if the NFL came to Birmingham, are you kidding me? I worked in Jacksonville, Florida before I worked here. In Jacksonville, nice city, but they don't. If Jacksonville can host an NFL team, Birmingham would be through the roof. Trust me. So, again, this stadium, quite frankly, looking back, I think the stadium's a little small now. If an NFL team came in, they'd have to do something with that. But it could be just a geography thing, I think. So,
Which I know this was before you moved to Birmingham, but Birmingham was in the running to actually get what became the New Orleans Saints
hmm
franchise,
hmm
but
yeah.
they
I mean, it was, well,
refused.
hey, we were in the running to get the big airport, and
Yeah,
Atlanta jumped in and it changed their city. So, who knows?
but Birmingham refused to build the Dome Stadium because they wanted to
Yeah.
save the Gray Lady. So
hmm Yeah, well, when you hear the stories about Coach Bryant and, the Bama folks didn't want a professional franchise to compete with college football. Who knows? Who knows if that's myth or that's fact? Probably a little bit of both. But, this is a great, people asked me, why I've stayed in Birmingham all these years. Well, my wife went to law school. She got a law degree. Then you have a kid. Then you have another kid. And then they're in school. And then, Channel 6, well, they offer you another great contract and, whatever. So it's been good to me. But the main thing is, as a sports guy, Birmingham is a great sports town. I mean, it always has been, it always will be. College football through the roof, NASCAR racing, high school football. Look what we did with high school football at Fox 6 with that sideline show. I mean, people used to, I have more people tell me that we helped the crime rate because we would, all the kids would not, instead of go out partying after the game, they'd run home and eat pizza and gather together for sideline viewing parties. So I always get, hey, look at me, we helped kids stay on the straight and narrow. But this whole market is just fabulous. Minor league hockey, the Bulls have done well. College basketball now. Look at what they're doing with Pearl now and Oates and
Hmm.
Kennedy. It's just unbelievable. I've always said this is one of the best sports markets going, and that's why I'm a firm believer that all these local stations need to continue to be a force covering local sports. If they're not, I think they're missing the boat. That's my commentary of the day right there.
Awesome. And like you said, this is a big sports area. And we currently have professional teams for all five major sports, football, baseball, hockey, basketball, and soccer, all of which have sustained multiple seasons. And from your perspective, can you speak on the landscape of sports here in Birmingham and how it's
Mhm.
changed to where can support that here in Birmingham?
Yeah. Well, a lot of different things. It's been a 30, 40 year project. I mean, Saban would say it's a process, right? But I think that stadium made a big difference. A lot of people didn't want that stadium. A lot of people did. I was all for it. I think it's great. It's a build it and they will come. They have done a great job remodeling the BJCC. That was long in the tooth, built in the 70s. Now it is beautiful if you've been there. Our population base has grown, and look at where Birmingham has come as a city. I mean, some of the best restaurants going. If you go up to Second Avenue North any day of the week, I mean, it
Hmm.
looks like Atlanta or San Francisco or something. Valet people will be walking around partying. I mean, it's just a happening city, different neighborhoods. Heck, there's even a Publix down by UAB now, right? And
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, we just come a long way. Our city over the past 10 years, it's just come a long way, and I think it's a destination place, and I think it gets a bad rap. I think look, I know Huntsville is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place to live. I'd live there in a heartbeat. If I wasn't working down here. But Birmingham gets a bad rap in a lot of ways, and I think that it's a wonderful place. It's got its issues, obviously, it's got its issues, but I just think the vibrancy of the city has made a big difference, and I think getting the right people in the right place. And you can argue, I mean, even Coach Saban, what he did at Alabama. Think of where that program was in 2006 with Mike
hmm,
Shula. I mean, Mike Shula, a wonderful man. Love Mike, love his wife. But he just made the whole difference. I mean, everything is good. I mean, UAB, what UAB is doing, they got a new business school, they got new facilities. That's not your father's UAB anymore. That is a major. It's a great place for your child to go to college. So I just think the city has come a long way, and I think times are with the facilities and the vibrancy of the city and the right people behind everything. I think it's made a difference. It's a great place to live.
awesome. Yeah. Um, you were talking about sidelines earlier,
Mhm.
and that was something I used to watch when I was, you know, coming up when I was in high school myself.
Mhm.
Um, but it covered high school football, and can you just share what the impact of the local high school athletic programs mean to these students who would or that may have changed the trajectory of some of their lives, giving them
Yeah, it really did.
opportunities that they might not have had, otherwise.
Hmm. I mean, that show did expose a lot of great talent. I had people come up to me all the time and say, "Hey, Mr. Carley, I was on sideline," and I said, "When was that?" And they'll say, "Well, I grew up either, whatever. It makes me feel old." But like 1989, 1990, of course, their kids were then on sideline. I was, and then their grandkids. I was almost covering like three generations because that show was on the air. So if you were like 18 years old in 1989, then your kid might have been on sideline 2009, right? And then their kid might have been on sideline 2018. So I'm talking about three generations of kids. But what it did was It gave the kids a lot of exposure. And, those were the days when, not everybody had these, recruiting videotape and these 5 stars, it wasn't a big deal, Marlon Humphrey all but committed to Alabama on one of my sportscasts. Carlos Dansby, who was a big time NFL, committed to Auburn on my sportscast. I mean, now it's a whole thing. Yeah, they wouldn't talk to these local stations. They talk to these networks, right? Or they put it on TikTok or ESPN, or they leave it for, Reese Davis to do it or something. But, back then it was more grassroots. And I remember some of the first people I covered back then, Stan White, David Palmer. When I saw David Palmer playing high school football, he's the best high school football player I'd ever seen. He's 165 pounds, 5'10", soaking wet. He went on to become a star. I went to Jackson Hole, gave him a star at Alabama. Went to play 7 years with the Minnesota Vikings. Just got inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago. But again, I was blessed to see all these guys coming up. And think of the people I saw coming up. But think of the people who saw these kids play because of that show. It was instant recruiting tape for these kids. And I've had a lot of assistant coaches down through the years tell me, hey, look, we used to watch as coaching staffs, Alabama, UAB, Auburn, or before once UAB got football. The coaches used to go watch the show to scout for players because back then, not everybody had the magic, cell phone in their hand and could do a videotape for these colleges. So, the show is still on. They do a great job over there at Channel 6. I think they've knocked it in half. I think they cut down the amount of games. But boy, back in the glory days, we used to cover 30 games every Friday night. That was that was crazy. No script. Just grab a 3x5 card, and the photographer would try to make sense of it all. When the game ended 15 minutes prior, so it was a rush for me because there was no script or no teleprompter. But it was a fun show, I think, for everybody who watched it. And, we tried to make it not only so much about the football players, but the cheerleaders and the band and the mom and the dad and the guy cooking the hamburger. So we tried to make it a whole experience for high school football. But I think it was and is one of the true gems in the state of Alabama. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, you kind of briefly mentioned that they kind of cut it in half. Sports coverage in the realm of the broadcast news and journalism overall has evolved tremendously over the past decade or so. Because I remember you had multiple segments. You had the sidelines, you had the blooper show on Channel 6, you had all kinds of things. And can you share your perspective on that evolution and with nearly 40 years experience in that business?
Well, I think local TV sports has come a long way. It had come a long way when I was, back in the 80s and 90s. Local TV news was king. It was before all these cable channels. You might have local cable, but you'd have what, like 13 channels or whatever. And if you wanted local sports, you're watching local TVs. Still think that's true today, which makes me scratch my head when I think some of these local stations are kind of doing away with sports. I don't understand that. But that aside, back then I remember, I did the Hall of Shame every Thursday night, blooper segment, very popular. I worked very hard on that. But that was just even before America's Funniest Videos came in. And it's before everybody had a cell phone. And so, I'd get a blooper from these feeds or whatever, and they were bloopers that people had never seen before. And so everybody's like, wow. Well, now I think if you tried one of those blooper segments, it'd be like, geez, I see these every day on my phone. It's just evolved that much. So I think that the task today of local stations in the sports field is to local, give them things they can't find on ESPN. They're not going to find on the networks. They're not going to find on, even rolltide.com or auburntigers.com or whatever. Give them something different, but you've got to go hustle and you got to go get that. That's what Sideline did. See, Sideline gave viewers local video that wasn't seen anywhere else. So I still think local sports coverage can continue and be fantastic. But I think some of these news directors, general managers, have to think outside the box a little bit more and go to their sports people and say, look, you're carrying a 20-second soundbite of Coach Saban every night. Everybody sees that on Sports Center. Let me give me something a little bit different. Try to think outside the box, and that's not always easy. You gotta hustle a little more. You gotta think differently, but it can be done. And some of the stations here in town are doing it. I've seen some of the folks are doing a good job of it still. So.
Um, Lastly, you left the newsroom and studio to start writing positive and uplifting articles on social media on your platform called Rick Karle Good News.
Mhm.
In the business of journalism, controversy gets the most attention. However, you have used your platform to do just the opposite and bring your optimistic articles to people. Um, can you speak on how this was conceived and why this means so much to you and shed a little light in the world of pessimism?
Yeah, sure. Uh, you know, Years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, as a local sports guy, local news people was all TV. I mean, I had it made when I look back at it. I'd go to work at 1:30, work on my 5 and 6 o'clock sportscast, break for dinner for an hour, come back, do the late show. That's it. Oh, then social media comes in, right? The cell phone, Facebook, Twitter. Then, well, all these local stations want their talent, and rightfully so, to be involved in that. So our jobs just got a little bit more difficult. So instead of 100% TV every day, it became more 50-50. Well, about 5, 6 years ago, I started getting more writing on Facebook at Channel 6, at Fox 6. And I found that, on Facebook, a lot of people just write about themselves. Well, I'm not too exciting. I mean, I'm a guy, I'm married, I got 2 kids, they're now out of the house. So right now I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my Yorkie, and I got 2 cats in the living room. So that's my life. So, um, to instead of writing about myself, I started writing about other people, and I started writing about good news. Nobody likes bad news, but I started writing about, and people really responded. And I started getting more likes, more hits, and more followers, and it just started exploding. I went to Channel 13 4 or 5 years ago, and they were very nice to let me continue writing while anchoring the morning show. I'd get off the morning show and write some, and then go out in the field or whatever I was doing. But they let me alone pretty much, and they were very nice to let me do that, and it continued to really explode. So now it's really become a good thing. I enjoy writing. I enjoy people. I've always enjoyed those Tom Rinaldi type features, that I did down through the years, and I'm simply writing about them instead of doing video with them. May I, or might I, reappear in television here in the next several months, perhaps, and do some of those on television, perhaps. But right now I'm writing those, and I really do like to write. I like the response I'm getting, and it makes me feel good too. Good too. I stay out of politics, stay out of kind of bad news. Twitter or X, is more of a back and forth kind of nasty. Where Facebook is trends older. You probably don't even look at Facebook. You're younger. You're on TikTok and Instagram, but for old folks like me, people. The other thing I did on Facebook, I had more consultants and more of these people that come into from corporate into the newsroom and tell you social media and said, look, you got to put a picture on Facebook, and you got to keep it short because people don't have attention spans. They're not going to read any of these long stories. I said, what the heck, Facebook, in my opinion, you can write a short story. If it's good and long, people will read it. It's got to be good. If it's long and junky or lousy, they're not going to read it. So some of my stories are long, but I think they're really good. I wrote a story today about a 10-year-old who died in a swimming pool mishap just 3 days ago. But his mom talked to me about her faith and everything. And it's kind of an uplifting story about this young man as opposed to the tragedy of him passing. So
Hmm.
I really like it. And, we'll see where I head. I've got a couple book offers. I will see if I'm going to write a book or be back on TV or just continue writing or just go fishing or go play pickleball with a wife. I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, we love it. The written journalism is a lost art, so it's great to see it. So thank you for coming on. It's been a great time having you on here. So if you need, I'm gonna put all of your links for your page in the
Cool.
description. So
Yeah, your stuff looks great. I love your graphics and art, Ryan. That's it. Yeah, it looks really good. So you're having fun with it?
oh yeah,
I mean, that looks good. Look at that. You got the font in there. Look at that. Rick Karle, good news. Well, thank you for the plug there. Check is in the mail. Should arrive at your place next week.
All right, thanks for
That's
coming on.
all right, man. Take care.
Awesome. That was just thank you to Rick Karle. That was a great interview with him. I want to thank you guys for watching this. If you like it, make sure you share it with your friends, your family, whatever. Make sure they know what's going on here, because there is commentary for Birmingham sports here in the Magic City. If you have any comments, comments, shoot them to the video. And as of right now, good night.